Hello, welcome to my channel, Close Reading with me, Dr. Octavia Cox. And today I'm going to be looking at the brilliant, the marvellous, the wonderful Jane Austen. And I'd like to show you how her brilliance kind of works in action in a short passage from Mansfield Park, Austen's novel from 1814. And what I want to focus on is the way that Austen plays with the reader about what's actually going on. Can we trust what we're being presented with? Is it the truth? What even are we being presented with? And I hope to show Austen's brilliance through kind of beginning to unpick just how layered any sentence of Austen's might be, because there are, in almost every sentence that Austen writes, there are layers of meaning, so that what you can kind of take from a sentence is far, far more than the sort of straightforward initial reading that you might have. And that's why Austen is such a brilliant person to read more than once, because her sentences have so many layers of meaning in them. And also today, I want to look at an aspect of Austen that I think is really interesting, which I have called, because there doesn't seem to be a definition of it anywhere else, meta-imagination. So I'll run you through what I mean as well by the term meta-imagination. Before I forget, if you like this video, do please subscribe and hit the thumbs up. So, what is meta-imagination? Well, meta etymologically is from the Greek, and it means with or across or after. And we use it now to mean something like outside looking in or self-referential. So metatextual, for example, is a text that sort of reflects on what it is to be a text. So if we talk about a metatextual novel, that's a novel which kind of deals with what it is to be a novel. Or a metatextual poem is a poem where the author might talk about what it is to be a poet. So it's that kind of self-reflection back on the art form that you're kind of working with. And so meta-imagination then is kind of imagination reflecting on imagination, which is something that Austen does absolutely beautifully, as I hope to show. So to do this, I'm going to look at a chapter from Mansfield Park quite near the beginning. This is chapter 7. So this is when Mary Crawford and Edmund Bertram are out riding together. And Mary is using the horse that Fanny Price should be using. And Fanny is partially aware of the growing attraction between Mary Crawford and Edmund Bertram. And she doesn't want to kind of admit it, out loud at least, but she's aware, she's conscious of it, and she's absolutely riddled with jealousy. But she won't admit it even to herself. And that's something that we as readers have to kind of work out from the way in which the narrative voice presents Fanny's thoughts to us. So Fanny is absolutely, desperately in love with Edmund Bertram. And he has absolutely kind of no idea about this, but she is almost crippled by her love for him. And it's an absolute secret. It colours almost everything that Fanny does in the whole novel, perhaps with the exception of her brother William Price. But almost everything is coloured by the fact that she holds this great, great secret that she doesn't think that she can reveal to anybody, that she is desperately, desperately in love with Edmund Bertram. And it's such a great secret that it's almost kept from the reader as well. So we aren't told Fanny loves Edmund. We have to kind of work out the sadness and the kind of desperation of Fanny's love from the way that Fanny's mind is presented to us. And that's what I want to look at now. So this is the scene. Fanny is watching a group. So the houses, so this is Mansfield Park and Mansfield Parsonage. The houses, though scarcely half a mile apart, were not within sight of each other, but by walking 50 yards from the hall door, she could look down the park. So she's going to look at the scene in front of her. She has to actually walk 50 yards from the house in order to look at it. She's interested in seeing what's going on. The scene didn't just kind of happen. It happened to come across her sight. So she walks from Mansfield Park, from the house, 50 yards so that she can look at them. And she looked down the park. She could look down the park and command a view of the parsonage and all its demesnes, so all its environs, gently rising beyond the village road. And in Dr. Grant's meadow, so Dr. Grant lives at the parsonage, in Dr. Grant's meadow she immediately saw the group. Edmund and Miss Crawford, both on horseback, riding side by side. Dr. and Mrs. Grant and Mr. Crawford, with two or three grooms standing about and looking on. So we have this kind of voyeuristic perspective here. We have us readers watching Fanny, Fanny watching the group, and everybody in the group and Fanny watching Edmund and Mary Crawford. Now, at first, because we have all eyes on Mary and Edmund, we might think as readers that our interest and our focus should be on Mary and Edmund, that something is going to be kind of revealed to us by the narrative voice about them, because everybody is looking at them and they're the center of attention. But in fact, this scene reveals virtually nothing at all about Edmund and Mary, and in fact reveals a great deal about what Fanny is dealing with just looking at Edmund and Mary. And we move from this kind of vista that we're presented with here, we move then into Fanny's mind. A happy party, it appeared to her, all interested in one object, cheerful beyond doubt, for the sound of merriment ascended even to her. It was a sound which did not make her cheerful. She wondered that Edmund should forget her, and felt a pang. She could not turn her eyes from the meadow. She could not help watching all that passed. And this is an absolutely kind of beautiful, beautiful set of sentences here. So we have a kind of double, we're told in a double sense that this is absolutely Fanny's kind of perspective that we're getting here. So it appeared to her. So this is all kind of the appearances that Fanny is imagining that she's seeing. So it appeared to her that they were a happy party. And that's kind of interesting for us readers to pay attention to, because that doesn't reveal anything at all, of course, about the party itself. They may or may not be happy. They might just be smiling but miserable inside. But to Fanny, they appear to be happy and all interested in one object. And you think, well, how does she know? She doesn't have access to kind of all of their minds. She has kind of grouped them all together as being happy. And this is part of the kind of pain of experiencing Fanny Price, the character within the narrative voice, is that she sees herself outside of everybody else time and time again. And this is another example of it. You know, they seem happy, they're over there, all of them are cheerful over there, and I am over here. And then we have a really kind of interesting clause within a sentence, cheerful beyond a doubt. Now that's quite an odd phrase there, that they were cheerful beyond a doubt. It's almost as if she's sort of willing them to be cheerful, that she's kind of persuading herself of this. Because that's a kind of odd thing for you to tell yourself, right? Those people over there, they look cheerful beyond a doubt. It's a bit of a sort of defensive position to be adopting, it seems to me. And then this kind of very, very sad line, for the sound of merriment ascended even to her. And again, this is another example, and that use of the word even there, Austen is doing something by making Fanny kind of even more removed, or suggesting that she feels even more removed than the kind of the scene itself is being presented to us. Because the narrative voice could say, for the sound of merriment ascended to her. But by adding in that even there, even to her, the sound of merriment came. That even kind of positions her kind of even more removed from what she's observing. And then we see Fanny position herself again on the outside. It was a sound which did not make her cheerful. And notice then that this is connected, her not being cheerful, in the same sentence with her thinking about Edmund. So it was a sound which did not make her cheerful. She wondered that Edmund should forget her and felt a pang. So they're over there looking happy, and she's convinced that they're happy, but she can't be happy because she's thinking about Edmund forgetting her. That she's looking at them all being happy, and all it makes her think is, Edmund's forgotten me, and he's over there being happy. And he doesn't, he doesn't kind of even remember that I'm here. And again, this is a beautiful example of Fanny setting herself outside of everybody else, all else, we're told. She could not turn her eyes from the meadow. She could not help watching all that passed. And again, what we have here is following on from the previous kind of thought in the previous sentence. So Edmund should forget her and felt a pang. She could not turn her eyes from the meadow. She could not help watching all that passed. And that's absolutely the kind of language and the feeling of somebody who is in love with somebody else. She can't not look at this scene, which is making her absolutely miserable. That looking at Edmund being cheerful and forgetting her, we're told, has made her feel a pang. We are actually told that she is feeling something on looking at this. And even though it makes her feel this pang, still she can't help but look. Still she can't help but watch. And again, it's this kind of almost obsessive language, watching all that passed. It's very sort of exaggerated and over the top, this sort of repetition of all. So at the beginning of this passage, we've got that they are all interested. Those people over there are all interested in what's going on with them. But equally, you've got Fanny watching, saying that she can't help but watch all that past. And then we're given the kind of crucial sentence. And this is what Fanny is imagining. And it's absolutely kind of beautiful, beautiful skill here by Austen. So Edmund was close to her, that's Mary. He was speaking to her. He was evidently directing her management of the bridle. He had hold of her hand. She, Fanny, saw it, or the imagination supplied what the eye could not reach. And there's sort of complete narrative flexibility in that word or there. She saw it, or the imagination supplied it. So this doesn't really tell us actually what's going on between Mary and Edmund at all. How much did Fanny see, and how much did Fanny imagine? the narrative voice leaves this completely obscure. But also, it's a beautiful rendering of the way that the imagination works when you're sort of watching something that you don't really want to be watching in front of you, and you can't see it all clearly, and you imagine the worst. You imagine what you can't actually see is going on. And this is meta imagination, because we have this kind of fictional character's imagination, and the narrative voice allows this imagination to be active. So we are told Fanny's imagination. This is a fictional character that has an imagination, an imaginative character, an imagined character that has an imagination, and the narrative voice doesn't leaves that uncertainty, doesn't close down that uncertainty in terms of kind of allowing us readers to interpret actually what Fanny's imagination might mean. And as I said earlier, this is nothing at all really. We're not told anything about Mary Crawford or Edmund. This is all a revelation of Fanny, and through the way in which it's presented to us, we can kind of understand her jealousy and understand how isolated she feels, even though that's not told, that's not kind of straightforwardly told to us. And this sort of use of the imagination is drawing on one of Austen's favourite poets, was William Cowper, and he wrote a kind of beautiful line, "Myself creating what I saw." And we know that this is one of Austen's favourite lines because Mr. Knightley quotes it in Emma. But the difference between Mr. Knightley and Fanny Price is that Mr. Knightley is aware that he might be himself kind of imagining what it is that he sees. He's aware that it might be myself creating what I saw when he's looking at Jane Fairfax and Frank Churchill. But Fanny is not so self-aware. This is the narrative voice presenting her imagination kind of to us. It's not Fanny reflecting on her imagination. She doesn't say to herself, oh, I might just be imagining all of this. It's the narrative voice tells us that Fanny saw it, or her imagination made her see it. So there's a subtle kind of difference there. So Fanny herself might not necessarily even be aware that she is imagining what she's seeing. She thinks she's seeing it, which is a kind of beautiful touch by Austen. And Austen's use of kind of meta imagination here does something which is kind of reveal to us readers what Fanny herself is not even willing to admit. So we kind of see in action her intense jealousy over Edmund with Mary. And that the narrative voice does this through showing us Fanny's imagination rather than through telling us. And Austen reveals so much to us through her use of diction, the choices that she makes with which particular word she uses. So here, for example, the imagination supplied what the eye could not reach. Now you could put something like, she saw it, Fanny saw it, or the imagination supplied what the eye could not see. But in choosing the word reach, there's that kind of added idea that Fanny is stretching for what she's seeing, that she's kind of extending herself out to try and reach Edmund and Mary. So I just want to close by looking at the final sentence in the paragraph. After Fanny has got herself very kind of agitated about what she's imagining, she began to think it rather hard upon the mare to have such double duty. If she were forgotten, the poor mare should be remembered. And this is such sort of beautiful biased reasoning here. We can see her mind in action. She began to think. She's desperately casting about for a legitimate reason for being so agitated with what she sees, because she knows that she shouldn't be so cross with Edmund and Mary and the group, because she has no right. She's not really allowed to be in love with him, and yet she is agitated. So she's casting around for a kind of legitimate reason why she's allowed to feel agitated. And so she's sort of is looking around and thinks, oh, the horse. Even if you've forgotten about me, remember the horse. It's about the horse. I really care about the horse. So it's a kind of beautiful psychological complexity here by Austen. And really what it shows is that you have to do quite a lot of work as a reader to understand the meaning kind of behind some of these sentences. So you might read this at first and it might come across that Fanny's just being a bit sort of surly and a bit churlish, that, you know, ugh, well, if they've forgotten about me, at least they could remember the horse. But actually if you think about this a little bit more, then what it sort of shows is the sort of desperation of Fanny, really, and how she can't sort of admit to herself, can't kind of allow herself to accept that she is so in love with Edmund, and so kind of jealous, that she guards him so jealously, and she's so envious of Mary Crawford. So I hope that you have enjoyed learning a bit more about meta-imagination, and I think it's really something to look out for in all of Austen's novels, because she does this with such dexterity, present characters' imaginations to you, and you have to do a lot of work as a reader to understand what does it mean that character is imagining something. You know, we're not told it as narrative fact, we're told it as a character's imagining about something, which is obviously a kind of removal and takes a lot more work for us readers to kind of interpret what Austen means by a character's imagination. So if you've liked this video, do please subscribe and hit the thumbs up. Check out my other videos and comment below suggesting any other Austen moments that you'd like to take a closer look at.